Hey guys, Mr. Zanakis here, and today we're going to actually be looking at creating our first parts in Onshape. And ultimately what we're going to be creating is all of the construction blocks. I want to show you how we're going to do that here, okay? So first of all, log into Onshape, all right, and we're going to go ahead and create our first document. Now, in Onshape, a document is basically a collection of a bunch of different files. It's different from a folder, but in essence, it works as a single document can have lots of different types of files. So let's go ahead and click on document here. And why don't we call this construction blocks? Construction blocks. Hit OK. Okay, and so what you see here right away is that you're in the sketching mode. Basically, you're ready to start modeling and sketching. And you have the three different planes here. And so if we look over here on the left-hand side, we have the origin. Notice that as I hover over it, it actually highlights it in yellow. So as I hover over it, it's the origin, the top view, front view, and the right view. Now I just actually selected each of these, so I'm going to unselect them. But just by hovering, you can see that it actually highlights them. And if I don't want to see any one of these for any particular reason, I can just actually click on the little eye view and it makes it go away. And now I see that it's grayed out. I can't actually see it, but click on it again and it brings it back up. So we really want to start a sketch. So there's a couple different ways to actually do that. So you can click on sketch. And now it's asking you, well, what is the sketch plane? Which plane do you actually want to draw the sketch on? And we can select front, okay? But I'm going to actually hit Control Z and go back and show you another way to do that. Rather than hitting sketch and then selecting the plane, you can actually go right over to the plane and hit right click and it brings up a new sketch. So again, right click on the plane itself and hit new sketch. Now, to draw a sketch, you really want to reorient the isometric view that we're looking at right here. And the way you can do that is by hitting the letter N on your keyboard. That's N as in Nancy, and it creates a normal view or a perpendicular view to your sketching plane. So from here, it's like we have a pad that we're drawing our sketch on in 2 dimensions. So the first thing I want to do is let's make a cube, okay? Now, I posted here your 9 blocks that you've been sketching, and I have the dimensions here. So if you didn't get all of the dimensions, you could use these dimensions to help draw these here in Onshape. So let's go ahead and create this first 1 1/8 inch by 1 1/8 inch cube. All right, so we're back here in Onshape, and what we're going to do is we're going to draw a rectangle. I can draw individual lines, I can draw rectangles, I can draw circles, I can draw arcs, I can draw polylines, I can draw splines, and there's several other things here. But let's just, before we look at everything, we're going to draw a cube, so we want to start with a rectangle. Now, this little arrow down gives us 2 different options here. Do I want to pick a rectangle by corner to corner, or do I want to have a center point? And so what you want to think about is, as you get more complex with your stuff, it's where do you want the center to be? So are you trying to make a square that's around a particular center, or do you want to make a rectangle that goes from a corner and grows out? So it all depends on the geometry of the shape that you're trying to create. Let's go and hit center point here to get familiar with this. So what I need to do is pick where I want it to be. Well, why don't I pick the origin here as a good starting point? And so by left clicking, I've select where I want my origin of my center point for my rectangle to be, and I can change these aspect ratios here. Okay, so let's just click. And after the first click, I can highlight as I drag my cursor. I'm not doing anything here, but other than hovering over it. When I hover over it, I can actually start to type. So it was 1 1/8. 1/8 of an inch in decimals is 0.125. So that's 1.125, and I hit enter. So I've defined this dimension. As I hover here, now it knows I want to dimension the other one. It's already basically highlighted. Well, let's start typing again here. So if I didn't know that the decimal of 1/8 was 0.125, you can certainly type it into your calculator, and it's good to get familiar with those. But you can also 1 plus 1 divided by 8, or an eighth. So PEMDAS, it's almost like you're typing in an equation here. I want to do 1 inch plus an eighth of an inch. And voila, I have the 1.25 by 1.1, 1.125 by 1.125, or an eighth, 1 and an eighth in each direction. So I'm satisfied with my sketch. I'm in 2 dimensions right now. I'm going to hit OK, or the green check. Now, what do I actually have? Well, if you right click and hold with your mouse, this is why it's important to have a mouse, anywhere in the blank canvas back here, it could be on either side, but if I right click and hold and drag, it allows me to do what's called a free orbit. You notice that cube over there in the corner is also rotating. Now, remember the front right top view, front left top view? You can see it's starting to come into shape. But if I get myself out of whack here and I don't really understand where I'm at, you can right click as opposed to hold, go down to isometric, and it brings you back to an isometric view of a front right top view, which, by the way, on this cube, it allows you to click any of these individual faces. I can spin it. I can grab a corner view, grab this corner view. Maybe I want this in-between view here. There's lots of different things you can do. And again, right click isometric brings me back to my home view. Okay, so I have this sketch in 2 dimensions. Well, I need a 3rd dimension. So what we do is we extrude the object. The extrude word basically comes from extrusion process, where stuff gets stretched or extruded through. And if you click on that, you can also hit Shift E as a shortcut, but click up here in extrude. We have a couple different options here: new, add, remove, or intersect. Well, right now we're going to do a new extrusion, and it asks what face or what sketch regions do you want to extrude. So come over to your sketch. Notice that as I go over it, it turns yellow. I can see that I'm hovering. Left click will actually select it. Now a little arrow will pop out here, and I can drag this out and stretch this, and I can go in different directions. Okay. Now, there's how you create this. There's a blind, which means from the sketch face out in the direction it's being oriented. By the way, I can flip this direction by just clicking it here. I don't have to actually drag it. If I want to do it from the sketch out a certain dimension, I can do that here. If I wanted to make it 3 inches, I could do that. It pops out. Now, another option instead of blind is symmetric. And what it does is it takes that depth that you type in of 3 inches and equally splits it from the sketch. So what you're seeing here is that it's going 1.5 in this direction and 1.5 in that direction. So why don't we stick with the symmetric right now? Again, a blind off of one direction is completely fine, but we're in symmetric here. How you create yours is up to you. And since this is a cube, this dimension here needs to be 1.125, or 1 1/8. And now we have our cube. I'm satisfied. I can hold down right click and free orbit. Okay, if you scroll, you can zoom in. If you hold down your center wheel, that allows you to pan and just move back and forth. Scrolling, zooming in and out, holding down the center wheel will allow you to pan, and right click and hold and rotate with your mouse by moving it. If I want to get back to my original view with my isometric, again, right click. Well, first I need to get out of this actual sketch. So I'm good with the extrusion. So I'm going to hit OK or check mark. Now I can right click, go to isometric, and it brings me back to my original view. And here you have a 1 1/8 inch cube that you just modeled. Nice job. Okay. If one of the other things I want to talk about is what is referred to as the additive method or the subtractive method. Let's just say that I wanted to add a little leg onto the bottom of this face here. Okay. You have the ability, just like before when you right clicked on a sketch plane to create a new sketch. But what I don't want to do is create a sketch from a plane. I want to create a sketch right off of this face. So I'm going to right click on the actual face of the cube and create new sketch. Now, again, I want to reorient the view so that I hit N Okay, so after you've created this new sketch on the face, you want to actually create and go to the normal view to help you with sketching. Again, pressing N will give you that normal or perpendicular view to the sketch plane. And we're going to zoom in a little bit here. And what we want to do is we want to actually add a sketch right on here that we're going to project off of to add a leg here. So we're going to use the rectangle. This time we'll use the two corner rectangle approach. So clicking up here to get our rectangle, we're going to go in this bottom corner and come up to this midpoint here. Okay, so I finished my sketch. I'm happy with that. Now, if you want to, you can right click again, go back to your isometric view so you can kind of see, and there is our sketch plane right there that we made. And we want to extend or extrude that. So we go to new, we're going to actually add to it. Okay, we still have to pick which face or which sketch region. So we're going to come back over here and we're going to hover, we're going to select there, and you can see that it'll pop out. Again, blind is fine for this particular thing because we're going to come off of that face in the direction that we're showing. And let's come out 1 inch, that's fine. So we're going to hit this little check mark here to approve this. And now it literally added this element on to here and created this. So that is the additive method, okay? Again, right click in the area, will get you back to an isometric view. If I want to look at it from the straight front view, again, I can click here and you can see that it added that L shape. Okay, so that is one method. It's called the additive method. If I wanted to actually remove this corner, there's another way I could do that. So let's go and look at that here in a second. Okay, so this time I want to show you a different approach if you needed to have a section removed. Like when you go to make that arch, you're going to want to probably use what's called the subtractive method, where you're going to actually remove based on your sketch. You're going to remove material. So let's start out with just a larger rectangular cube for our reference. Okay, so we're going to, again, right click on this front view is the sketch I want to do, and I want to go to new sketch. Again, N will give me that normal view. We're going to use the 2-point rectangle again, and this time we'll just sketch it out here. We're going to hover over here and we're going to make this, let's make it 3 1/8, so 3.125. Sorry, my number lock was off there. 3.125, and we'll make this over here. Let's just make it 2.5 inches high. Okay. So we have our new sketch, and we want to extrude that first. So again, confirm that's okay. I want to go to extrude, and we want to pick this sketch plane. Again, if you're having a hard time seeing where that sketch plane is, you can always hold down your right mouse. Okay, so right click and hold allows you to free orbit. Again, double holding down your mouse wheel, panning and scrolling zooms in. If I right click and go to isometric, gets me back to that original frame of reference for that front right top view. Okay, so I want to extrude. I need to select my object that I want to extrude, my sketch, and there you go. In this case, I'm just going to say that I want to go the opposite direction, and let's make it 2 inches in depth. All right, that looks good. I'm going to click OK, and now I have my new shape. Now, let's say I want to cut out the corner of this, kind of looking like the other block was, where I showed you how you can add on to the original cube. You can also remove material using a sketch. So again, we want to create a sketch on this face, right click, new sketch, and for normal view. And this time we're going to create a new sketch, again, 2-point rectangle, except I want to remove this corner. And let's say I want to remove 1.5 inch by 1.5 inch. So 1.5 by 1.5. Again, just typing in there. Now I've created this sketch. And we have this, we're good. We're going to hit OK. And we're going to go back to extrude, except this time we're not going to add to it. We're going to actually remove material. It's asking us what face do you want to use? And here is my sketch. See, you could remove the other portion or the sketch. And this is what I want to remove, this corner. So I'm going to click here and you can see that it's already defined because I said removed. It's cutting into the material to remove it. Now it's cutting for a depth of 1 inch based on a blind. Again, you still have all of these options of how to reference to. So rather than defining a dimension, I just want to say you could do up to a next view, up to a certain face, but we're going to select through all, and it basically means I'm going to remove all the material associated with that, just like that. So there we go, we have that. And now that's another way to actually create or remove, which is called the subtractive method. Rather than adding on to it, we were able to create a sketch and then extrude, but extrude with a remove to remove that. So when you go to create the arch, that would probably be a good way to do it. Now let me just show you another way here. I'm going to go back and create a new sketch just so you can see from reference on how you would actually do it. So new sketch, again, N is normal. This time let's use the circle and let's just pick right here. I'm going to draw out a circle. Say I wanted to remove that for that portion. We're going to hit OK. Right click, isometric. I just like to see things in this view. It helps me to be able to see it. We're going to extrude. We're going to remove. I'm going to select the circle. And there's the half circle. You can select these individually. Select that. And then it's remove. And then instead of setting it to a certain depth or worrying about that, I'm just going to select through all. And you can see that that is cutting that out. So that's how you would do the arch, and we're going to accept that. And then there you go. You can see how that removed that. So that's how you would do that when you're creating the arch. Okay, so you can either add to or remove material from any other given sketch. It's really up to you what you think is the most efficient way to do it based on the individual type of design. Okay, so we're back here. One of the things I wanted to show you is that after this is like the cube, we've created it, it's perfect, it's ready to go. What you can do is you can come down here in the Part Studio, you see these different tabs. Okay, by right clicking on it, you can go and rename it. Let's call it cube. Ultimately, you're going to have all of these lining up down here. So if we're good with the cube, if you wanted to move on to your next part, you would actually hit a plus symbol here to insert a new element. This is all under the same document here that's called construction blocks. So we're going to hit add, and you want to create a new part studio, and it opens up a new tab. And in fact, you can sketch whatever you want. So let's just say we were going to sketch the triangle. So we're going to rename, and we'll call this small triangle. You can call it whatever you want based on what part you're describing. If you look over here, if I have two different triangles, this is 1 inch and an eighth, 1 inch and an eighth. Okay, so let's create that one real quick. Again, right click, go to new sketch, and for normal, we're going to use the line, and we will, let's just say we start here, we come down to here, come over to here, come over to here. Okay, now I didn't actually spend the time to worry about it. I just created the shape. You can always then come and dimension anything after the fact. So over here is the dimension. So you click on dimension. If you click on an individual line, it enables you to just dimension that line. If however, I wanted to dimension from a particular point to that line, you have to click again and it will say, okay, now I'm dimensioning that. So with dimensioning, you have the ability to do point to point or the dimension of a line. It all depends on what you're trying to do. But for this, I'm just going to want to dimension these bottom two and let this hypotenuse be whatever it is. So I'm going to hit here, I'm going to dimension this, and we're going to make that 1 1/8. So 1.125. And then I want to dimension this here, and we'll make that 1.125, 1 1/8. And I'm good with that. So we're good from there. And now I want to extrude back that 1 1/8 for the depth that was shown. So pick your face. Okay, we're going to go blind. So from there, I actually want to go the opposite way. It doesn't really matter. It's up to you. But I'm going to just to show you that you can toggle that back and forth in terms of which direction you want to go. And not 1 inch, but 1.125 or 1 1/8. And that looks good. And we're going to click OK. And we just created the small triangle piece, just like that. Okay, so between all these things I've shown you here, hopefully this is enough information. Right click isometric, gets us back to that original isometric view. And so from here, I'm going to have you go ahead and create all those pieces individually.